Hey everyone, Sunday, time for a new episode of Record Collecting with the Quill. And this week I'm just going to show you some stuff I bought. We had a record fair in my hometown yesterday, so I came home with a mixed bag of things, so I thought I'll show you what I got. But before we start, you know the drill, make sure you subscribe, hit the little notice bell, and share with your friends. Well, I live in a rather small town, but I think it's like close to, I think it's twice a year we have a small record fair where sort of buyer sellers from the area getting together, and yesterday was quite fun. It was a few more sellers than usual, so I was able to find some cool stuff, and it's always really nice whenever these fairs you get to know all the people living in a small town who has the same interests as you, so you end up speaking to a lot of people just as much as you're looking for records, so it's always nice. But I managed to find some cool stuff in this. Gotta protect the environment, so keep these tote bags instead of plastic bags. So let's see. Got a nice bunch of albums here. Starting out, bought a couple of. This is Swedish music. 2 albums with. He's sort of a guy called Pug Rogefeldt, a Swedish artist who's sort of really important in the Swedish music scene. He was the first one to start out singing rock and roll music in Swedish back in the late 60s. And this is a later album from the mid 80s. It has a couple of good songs on it, and this is a live album called Pug and Rain Rock. One more step at Steg Till. Some great music, Swedish music. This is a really famous live album in Sweden, but some cool stuff. If you can stand the Swedish lyrics, be sure to give it a listen. Next one, I was actually managed to find a Kiss album I didn't have in my collection. The German version of Killers with the censored logo. I know a lot of people hate these, but I think they're kind of cool, and I think this was. Then I think I'm missing Alive too, but then I have all the others, so it was nice to get it finally. It's kind of difficult to find, I believe. Also, I caved in and bought this one. I'm usually not that fond of these sort of counterfeit albums, but I bought the Black Sabbath Cross Purposes bootleg album. It's a bootleg version or repressing of it, but it was rather nice, and I will not shell out the money that original copy costs. So I think it's usually somewhere in the area of 500 euros or so. So I caved in and bought this one instead. But it looks rather nice. I haven't had the time to spin it yet, but I will. Another Black Sabbath, if you can call it that. Black Sabbath. This is a 12-inch. No Stranger to Love from the Seventh Star album, Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi. Was rather cheap, and whenever I find Black Sabbath stuff I don't have, I buy it. So I got this one. It has a remix version of Stranger to Love. It's a little bit shorter than the album version. I haven't had the time to compare it yet, but nonetheless cool. And this was one I was hoping to find, and I did find it. The last of the James Gang's album I'm missing, Passing Through. This one seems like it was, you could see it everywhere like 20 years ago, but I just went for the Joe Walsh and Tommy Bolin albums, and then I decided to get the others as well. And this one has escaped me. It's always like that sometimes with albums. I remember seeing this all the time, and when I was looking for the Joe Walsh albums. But now it's getting. Wouldn't say it's quite hard to get, but it's sort of just escaped me for a long time. I had to pay a little bit more for it than I thought I would, but sometimes when you find something you've been looking for a long time, you end up paying a little bit of overprice. But there's always new money. But this is the 5th one, the second album they did with Dominic Troiano on guitar, and the last one before Tommy Bolin joined the band. I think James Gang is as I mentioned them before. I really like them, and now I have all their albums. I will do a future episode just focusing on all their albums. Next one, I've been collecting. I love collecting Bob Dylan, and I have sort of most of his stuff, but there's still a few missing, and I'm ending up buying the bad ones, I believe, or those with a bad rep. Self-portrait has always been debated or hated among the Bob Dylan fans, but if you're collecting Bob Dylan, you're bound to have everything. So I bought this one. I think it was a repressing from 75, but it's still cool. You have fold out as well. Rather nice photo on the back as well. And I also got this one, the Dylan album. Also not one of his best, but this was a nice US pressing of it, an early one, I believe. So, and a good price for it as well. Those are hard to get, these albums, as I said. They're not famous for being his best, but if you're collecting Bob Dylan, I guess you're bound to have everything. So I finally bought these. And the last one, this one, I wasn't particularly looking for it, but I was really glad when I found it. It's a fantastic album by Primal Scream. The original Memphis recordings, this one is called. I don't know if you know the story, but Primal Scream had a big hit with the Screamadelic album, and when they were bound to make another album, they decided to go to Memphis, work with legendary producer Tom Dowd, and record with a Muscle Shoals band, and recorded a couple of the tracks what later became Give Out But Don't Give Up. But these recordings, when they were finished, they were deemed as not good enough by the record label. They wanted something more in the style of Screamadelica, so they re-recorded everything. And this recording was left on a shelf and forgotten, and was found later by the guitarist in Primal Scream, who found an old DAT tape and gave it a listen and realized that it was really, really good. So they decided to release it in 2018. And what you have here is early versions of a couple of the famous tracks, as I said, Jailbird and Brox, and those songs from the Give Out But Don't Give Up album. It's a rather tricky thing to say. And they also made a documentary that's well worth to check out if you haven't seen it. And it's a fantastic album, as I said. Really, I can see why they didn't release it, because it as a follow-up to Screamadelica, but it's as an album on its own, it's fantastic. You have Primal Scream with their sort of Rolling Stones-esque songwriting, and then you pair it up with the Muscle Shoals vibe and the producer of Tom Dowd, and you get an excellent album. So that was the last album I got. It was a nice vinyl copy. As I said, I was really happy when I found it, because I've been searching for it and didn't expect to find it at a small fair in my hometown. But sometimes you're really lucky and strike out and find cool things. Well, that's what I got this week. In QUILL land, well, we're writing songs. We have tons and tons of songs, so we're sort of wading through all the material and hoping to start recording. I think probably at the beginning of 2023. Right now we're working and as I said, and trying to patch things together and look at all the material. We wrote tons of stuff during the whole COVID lockdown, so it's rather different for us. We usually struggle quite hard, but this time it's the other way around, and it's a pleasant problem to deal with. Make sure you follow the QUILL on social media. It's the QUILL Sweden, the QUILL Sweden. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again next week. Cheers. Bye.